This time on Legacy 4x4, we're gonna turn some old 15-inch rims into some 15-inch beadlocks. We're gonna put these old 37x15s on them, and we're gonna have a good time, all thanks to Total Metal Innovation. Excuse me. Let's go over what we got. We have 5, I'm doing 5 sets of these inner rings. These are the 1/4-inch inners, they're really nice. I went ahead and opted for them to send me some new valve stems, as well as some BBs to balance them out. So I also spent about $70 on Amazon and Fastenal, bought some grade 8 3/8 bolts, washers, nuts. I'm not doing nut certs or anything, just bolt washers and nuts. TMI also sends you the outer plates as well, equally 1/4-inch. Like I said, these outer plates are 1/4-inch as well. I went ahead and painted all these outer plates first because they need to be painted before you put them on, so might as well lean them up, get them painted before you install them, and just call it a day on the paint for those. You paint the inner ones once they're welded to the wheel, so there's no need to paint those before you do anything else, but these outers, you might as well just paint on the outside, make them look nice and pretty. Like I said, I'm doing 5. The 5th one's a spare. It's a different pattern. It's the it'll buff out pattern for comedic relief, you know? Alright guys, as you can see, I have my 15-inch steely wheel right here. They're really easy to work with. They're found everywhere. They're super cheap. That's why I picked these for the beadlock conversion. They're also already on it, so I don't have to buy more. Alright, so first step is to clean the wheel. As you can see, mine's not very clean. I'm probably not even going to clean the inside. I'm just going to clean this top lip where I'm going to weld, but just prep with a welding surface. While you're here, you should also replace the valve stem if you're going to do that before you add the inner beadlock ring on, or before you do anything else, because it's just easy to do it right now. So without further ado, I'm going to rip this old valve stem out, shove a new one in, and then we're going to get started prepping for the beadlock inner ring. Alright, I guess the camera cut out, but all I did is put the valve stem through the wheel when nothing's on it, shove it through put the skinning in through the inside of the wheel. I used a pair of flat vice grips, grabbed it from the front, pulled it through. It's rubber, it'll pull through before you break anything as long as you're nice and careful about it. So that's done. Next step's gonna be start to prep this outside edge right here for the inner beadlock ring to sit. So we're gonna take the grinder out, grind this nice and smooth, get bare metal on every contact surface, and then prep that inner wheel as well. Like I said, you're gonna go through a lot of these discs. In order to get inside this inner edge of the crevice, you gotta have flap on the outside. You gotta have the sandpaper on the outside. This one doesn't, so I'll save this one for when I get back to grinding them, just so I can get that inner piece. But other than that, you gotta put a new disc on just to get the inside of this wheel nice and prepped. All right. What you just saw me did was take a little bit of the machining off the back side of this inner wheel, just so that I can get it nice, just so I can get a nice ground connection for the weld. You're probably supposed to use a wire wheel, but you know, it's all the same to me. It's still gonna make a good weld, and I didn't take off nearly enough material to make a difference. So next step is gonna be centering this inner ring as center as you can get it on the wheel. There's gonna be about, I'd probably call that a 1/16 inch of a gap. From the very outside edge to the inner ring, which is fine. You're just going to fill that with weld anyways. And getting to the welding, it might be nice to note now that when you weld, try not to lay a very thick bead, penetrate it properly, get a full weld and make it airtight so it doesn't leak any air, because that will leak air if your weld's not full. But make sure your bead's not super thick, because the first time I built beadlocks, I put a thick bead on the outer edge, and that bead ended up taking me an hour to grind off one wheel. So unless you want to spend all that time grinding, there's no point to do that. So, alright, we're coming up to about center right now with the wheel. Also, a quick note is to make sure the valve stem is centered in between 2 of the anti-coning supports. We're getting ready to tack this in place. Nothing really to it, just tacking a star pattern once it's all flat and even, and then once it's tacked, you can start welding the whole ring in place. To weld it, I'm gonna use my MIG Max 215. I actually have it set on the 3/16 setting using MIG. That's what I found fills up the most, gets a nice clean penetrative weld. So that's what I'm gonna use, using 220 volt. All right, like I said, nice little star pattern for some small tacks. Now we're getting laying some, I'm gonna do about 3-inch long passes until I fill up the entire outside diameter of this inner ring, just so I try and prevent any warping. Not that I think it'll warp, but just to be safe, good practice. Okay, that's how it turned out. As you can see at the very end, I went around and I threw extra weld on top of each seam where I joined 2 beads. That's just because you need it to be airtight, because this is what holds tire pressure, so might as well be safe. It's all gonna get ground out anyways, so as long as it's airtight, you should be good to go. And just our luck, the next step's gonna be grinding down the entire outside edge, making this edge nice and flat. Bevel the corner, make it smooth, make sure there's no holes in the welds, and it's a really not fun time. So I'm gonna save you guys the hassle of watching it. All right, so just like that, we're all flat. As you can see, all of the edges are smooth. There's a bevel along the very outside edge so you don't hurt any of the rubber. So here we are, the inner ring is in place. As you can see, it's all fully welded. So next step is gonna be to bend these tabs, these anti-coning tabs upwards, and then you're gonna weld a seam in the middle of those, and then you're gonna prep and paint. So to bend these, they say you can use a long crescent wrench, any kind of long pliers and pull them up, but they're pretty tough in this 1/4 inch. So I'm gonna show you my preferred method to get these nice and 90-degree bent up by hand. All right, got my trusty framed vice grips #1 and a nice 5-foot section of 2x2 to add some torquey boys to the bends. So all I'm gonna do, put the vice grips on the rim, put the 2x2 around the handle of the vice grips, and give it a nice gentle pinky push forward. And we're gonna clear room, make all these 90. We're gonna come back and then we're gonna weld them. All right, here we are, back staring at the wheel. So as you can see, these are all bent to 90. Did a little bit of torque multiplication right there to get them bent. Next thing is going to be weld the seam along the inside edge of all of these. You don't need to grind the seam down, you just need to weld it and then clean it up. So let's get on to that. All right, that's how those welds look. That's the weld in the seam right there on the anti-coning tabs. It's about 2.5 inches, maybe 3 inches long. It's, going through the middle of every single one of those anti-coning tabs. But yeah, now that the anti-coning tabs are all bent and welded in place, next step's gonna be painting this, and then this wheel will be done. So as you can see, this is what a finished wheel looks like. It's exactly the same as the wheel up there. Anti-coning tabs are all welded in place. Inner ring is on the wheel. But that's as far as I'm gonna get in the process for now. That's because I have 3 more of these wheels to do, and because these are 37x15, so there's a lot of sidewall on these tires, and I can't get it in by hand without wrestling for, probably hours to get each of these mounted just on that first inside edge of the tire. So I'm gonna get all of the wheels to this current state with the inner beadlock ring, all 3 of them, and I'll be back and I'm gonna take them to my favorite on-post tire shop. It's gonna cost me 10 bucks. They're gonna use the machine, they're gonna mount it. That way I don't have to worry about wrestling anything. All right, here we are at the shop. Gonna get them mounted real quick. Just gonna have the shop throw them on the rims and then take them back, and then we can finish these beadlocks up. First things first, everything's on the stand. This is where I'm gonna be working the whole process, get this outer ring installed. If you're gonna run BBs, now's the time to throw them in. Just throw them in the wheel, they're not gonna go anywhere. It's also recommended you use a little bit of silicone between the beadlock and the tire just to keep things nice and airtight, just in case. You're gonna need all your hardware, keep it in bags until you're gonna use it so you don't lose it all. I'm going to use a closing wrench for the back of it because I am using bolts and nuts. And then I have a small drill that I'm going to use to get things a little past finger tight before I use the torque wrench. I've got this nice snap-on OG super old school inch-pound torque meter, so that's what I'm going to use to get them all snug to 20. You know, like everything else, it's a crisscross star pattern, so you get it right. It's going to take you a lot of passes. It took me 3 to get the first one I did on these sets nice and snug. A quick note, if your bead on your tire is too thick, you might need some longer bolts. I'm running 1.5-inch bolts for my beadlocks because that's about perfect for what I need, but in order to press that outer plate down enough to get it started, I'm going to be using 4 longer bolts that I just have for my scrap bin. So without further ado, I'll let you guys revel in my misery as I slave over these beadlocks for the next 2 to 3 hours. Okay, here we are. As you can see, I have my 4 guide bolts in. I also have a few of my actual bolts that are in, just keeping the spacing absolutely perfect between the upper and the lower plates of the beadlocks. So all I'm gonna do now is torque these guide bolts down a little more. That way I have enough room to get everything finger tight on all my individual bolts. And then I'm gonna take the guide bolts out, put regular bolts in here, and then proceed with the 32 times torquing procedures. Alright, so here we are. Everything is finger tight. Now it's time to go around and do the crisscross pattern with my trusty snap-on torquometer and get these all down to 20 inch-pounds. It's going to take a few passes, so I already did 1 crisscross pass, but I'll probably end up having to do another crisscross pattern just to make sure everything is nice and snug. Let's knock it out, and then let's get to seating this bead on the backside, and then we can put some air in it, and then we'll have a tire. Okay, so it's sometime later now, and all these are at 20 inch-pounds, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to throw this on the ground, get some air in it, try and seat that back edge of the tire, and then we're going to check for leaks and then retighten everything, make sure everything's nice and tight. So let's do it. Alright, to fill it, all you're going to do is put enough air pressure through the front of the valve, and then once it starts getting enough air pressure, you'll see it pop on the bead and you'll be good to go. You'll also hear it. So I'll go ahead and get this on the bead for you guys, and then we can check for leaks, and then we can close this one tire up. So here we go. So you probably didn't hear it since the air compressor went off as soon as it popped, but popped into place, nice and tight. Now I'm going to put enough air pressure in it to see if the front beadlock is going to hold. Okay, so all I hear is the ocean like a conch shell, so we're good to go. I'm gonna go roll this one up to the car, get it ready to get swapped in. Next time you see me, guys, I will be hopefully testing these bad boys out in the Dodge and making sure they hold air when there's not a lot of air pressure. Alright guys, here's how they turned out. You can't really see them because I might have sunk them a little bit of mud for this little small photo shoot. You know, the bad thing about Georgia is you have to drive 2 hours to go find any rocks worth crawling to air down for. So you get what you get, you don't throw a fit. Here's how they came out. Man, those things are so good looking. I'm really happy with them. I think they really pop. Going back towards the rear, same thing. Nice little made in the USA right there. Coming in. Don't mind the bike. There's the spare. You know, it'll buff out just in case I ever need to use it. Little comedic relief. And a little mountain bike for some small adventure time for myself and my dog. So that's how it turned out, guys. Super stoked with how it works. Super stoked with how it looks. And yeah. More to come on the Dodge, as always. I've got a few trips planned and a few big things planned to try and go actually see some nice sights and also find some terrain that's worth, you know, wheeling in besides just the Georgia mud that I'm around usually. So that's it for this time, guys. Until next time, I will catch you guys later.